Morning. I'm going to be speaking in English, so if you need headphones, now's the chance to get them. And before can you hear me now? um, so I am going to be speaking in English, and because of that, I do want to thank our translators. I don't speak Spanish. I don't understand Spanish. They make it possible for me to come to this meeting and have a meaningful experience, so thank you. Cynthia, I also want to say I love the fact that you start the day with the New York Times, the fact that you read the Washington Post. I'll forgive you. So my name's Michael Greenspon. I'm the Global Head of Licensing and Print Innovation at the New York Times. And I'm joined here today by two of my colleagues from Latin America, Chris Salim and Rosa Gonzalez, and they do all the hard work. So today I'm going to try to talk to you for about 30 minutes, a little bit about the Times Company digital strategy, some things we are doing in print to keep that business alive, and some opportunities that we have in Latin America. And if I'm able to do that, we should have about 15 minutes for questions at the end. So first, let's briefly turn to the context in which we are all operating. The internet is maturing, and user consumption, defined by the amount of time spent online, is expected to grow more slowly, both in the United States and globally. Here in the United States, and we heard Cynthia say this, all consumption growth is on mobile. And in fact, if you look at every other platform, consumption is declining. And despite the issues that we've all been reporting on, and despite attempts by governments to limit their control, the platforms and big tech companies still dominate advertising, and that domination is only growing. In fact, if you do the math, if you're not named Amazon, Facebook, or Google, the rest of us will share less than 10% of the growth in online marketing. But the market for consumer media is growing. And while the numbers for digital news are still small, the growth is real. So how is this playing out for the Times? As Ricardo said, we now have actually nearly 4.5 million total subscribers. That includes both print and digital. And in digital, it includes both our news, our crosswords, and our cooking app. Excluding print, this shows the progression of our total subscriptions since 2011, when we launched our paywall. Cynthia talked about reaching the consumer. We talk about engagement, different words, same exact idea. We are fully leaned in on engagement. We are a consumer-first, subscription-first business. And everyone in the company is focused on that. And that's true for me, that's true for our CEO and executive editor, but it's also true for the copy editor. Also in Q1 of this year, our crossword subscription passed the 500,000 subscriber mark, making it the 5th largest digital subscription from a US news provider. And importantly, overall, since 2011, our volume of readers has flipped from 75% print to 80% digital. The story is similar, but with a very important difference on the revenue side. So we've gone from 90% print revenue on the subscription side to now 40% digital. But we've done that by keeping print revenue, while keeping print subscription revenue flat. So this is a for us, a pure growth story. So these are our numbers, digital numbers for 2018. Our subscription-first strategy does not mean that we are ignoring advertising. As you can see, we still have a robust and growing digital advertising story. But in a world where the platforms are taking the majority of every single new dollar spent, advertising's limitations are clear, and we're focused on where we can differentiate ourselves. And this includes large branding deals, podcasts, and T-Brand Studios, which is our branded content studio. The result is that last year we reached $709 million in total digital revenues, and digital revenues, as Ricardo said, now account for over 40% of our total revenue. And subscription revenue, print and digital combined, make up nearly 60% of the company's revenue. In the first quarter of this year, for the first time, our digital-only subscription revenue was more than 25% of the total. And that's an important milestone for us because while we think print has a long, long future, we do also believe that digital subscriptions are the future. Incidentally, the market has noticed our success, sending our stock up over 40% than this time last year to numbers that we have not seen since 2005, which is before the Great Recession. So what's next for us? As I mentioned, in 2018, we had over $700 million in digital revenue. This places us 3/4 of the way to our 5-year goal of $800 million, which was doubling our digital revenue, 3/4 of the way after 3 years when we said it would take us 5. Rather than simply patting ourselves in the back, we took that opportunity to raise our ambitions, and our new company objective is 10 million subscribers by 2025. So how do we do that? The short answer is we double down on what we do great. Our core strategy is to continue to invest in high-quality, independent journalism that the Times is so well known for. Earlier this year, the Times won its 126th and 127th Pulitzer Prizes. That is nearly double our closest competitor. We attribute much of our business success to the focus on that mission. Every decision we make is about our news content. Today, we have over 1,600 journalists working at the New York Times. That is more than at any point in our history. Our newsroom has 15 domestic bureaus and 30 international bureaus. And in 2018, our journalists traveled to and reported from more than 160 countries. This unprecedented investment in original reporting is having an impact, helping to spark the Me Too movement, prompting reform at the technology platforms, being used in the US Senate to vote to end atrocities in Yemen, and countless other cases, including freeing an 11-year-old Thai girl from a child marriage. But in today's world, you can't just do world-class journalism. You have to talk about it. The Truth is Worth It campaign is an effort to illustrate it. It's an effort to illustrate what it takes to produce just one story. And now we'll turn to a video.
Hello, this is Austin Ahmed from the New York Times. You didn't know what kinds of people we were upsetting. Like something's fucked up in this thing. I don't know what it is. Something's wrong. But I say after I'm at the New York Times. I am really worried. In the country. Somebody's gone through all of my stuff. They come after me. Like I think we're all being hacked. had this Orwellian grip on society. My fear is that they show the willingness to kill. Keep it on up with the Mexican government. If they want to touch you, they will.
Thank you. For us, it's important in today's world where, I mean, Cynthia mentioned this, where we're under attack constantly, that our marketing is focused on the effort we go to report every single story and to get it right. And it's not to say we never make mistakes. We do. We correct them when we make mistakes. And our intention, someone said this yesterday, our intention is to get it right every single time. So while the company's story is one of digital transformation, our print product is still at the heart of everything we do. We started thinking strategically about our print innovation in early 2017, and in August of that year, printed our first print-only section since the launch of our website in the early 1990s. So if you think about that, for over 20 years, everything we made was online. Starting in 2017, we decided we needed to give our print readers something a little bit more. That fall, we set up two separate teams, one to work on the print exclusives that I'll talk about in a minute, and one team of about 60 editors and designers to focus exclusively on producing the daily paper. While the Print Hub was created to allow the majority of the newsroom to focus on digital, it's actually had a transformative effect on print as well. If you, I don't know if it's big enough that you can see it, but if you look under the All the News to Fit box at the upper left of Tuesday's paper, you'll see that it's marked volume number 58,397. That's a lot of history and a lot of tradition. And history and tradition are wonderful things, but they can also be limiting, especially if you're resistant to change. Luckily, the editors and designers on the Print Hub decided to change the way they thought about the paper. One of the early victories was a heart-wrenching story of a woman's first year after being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It was a major piece that we planned to publish online in full, but originally we were going to spread out over 4 days in print. We made the case that it would serve our readers better to print the whole thing in as a standalone special section that they could keep, that they could take their time with, and that they could share. And luckily that argument won the day. But news, as I've mentioned, is still at the core of absolutely everything we do. This breaking story was initially published in the A section, A1, of the Thursday paper, but then we turned around and produced a larger special section for the Sunday paper when our circulation is significantly larger. This, of course, is the tax story for which 3 of our journalists won this year's Pulitzer. Turning to the print exclusives, our first print-only exclusive was an excerpt from Colson Whitehead's Underground Railroad. This year, we'll produce roughly 20 print exclusives. Here is a recent homage to print, a photo-heavy section of what it takes to get the paper printed and deliver every single day. We also run an annual puzzle section, print only, with an ever-growing crossword section in the centerfold. This one's from a few years ago. I counted last night. It's 53 squares by 53 squares. I believe this year will be up to 56 squares by 56 squares. I don't know how long they can keep going one larger, but I know they're going to try. And of course, we're trying to reach a younger audience. No, we are not marketing to 10-year-olds, but we are marketing to their parents. One of the interesting things about the kids section is that when we launched it, it was launched purely for readers. There was no expectation whatsoever about getting any advertising. Here are some of the covers of the monthly print section. Again, it's available only for print readers. If you have a chance, I'm not unfortunately technologically savvy enough. Yesterday, I got an ad that we ran on the daily podcast for this week's kids section. We recorded it in a classroom, and it's kids talking about the kids section. And it's just one of the cutest things you'll hear. So when you're depressed about whatever's going on in the world, find it, listen to it. It'll put you in a better mood. Like with digital, we're taking advantage of technology. I don't expect any of you to be able to read this, even if you tilt your head. But the Times owns the only press in North America that allows us to print a fold-out section that makes it 4 pages wide. One result is this pull-out 4-foot-long annotated version of the US section of the US Constitution. Another was this 4-foot-wide image depicting dozens of refugees waiting in line at a food distribution center. And even though this photo did run digitally, there really is no digital equivalent of seeing this photo in print. Finally, we're taking advantage of the fact that we print the paper in 25 locations around the US. For our photo essay of the 131 women of the current US Congress, we produced 25 different covers. At the end of the day, it's important to realize we're not doing print innovation because of vanity or because our print hub thinks it's cool. Think back to the subscriber volume and revenue pages where I mentioned that print subscription revenue has more or less stayed flat since 2011, even as the number of subscribers has declined. We need print for the foreseeable future, and this is one of the ways we are continuing to make the product worth paying for. Finally, with the few minutes I have left before questions, let me turn to some of the things we are doing in Latin America. First off, as you know, the New York Times is not just in English anymore. When translating articles, the goal is to help expand our reach, engagement. One recent example is the story we published about the Colombian Army. Stories like this, published in Spanish, have helped grow our audience in Colombia by 43%. So too, our original opinion pieces perform well, and in fact, Boris Muñoz, our opinion Spanish language editor, was just awarded one of this year's coveted Maria Moores Cabot Prizes for outstanding coverage of the Americas. We also have a long history of collaborating with digital and print publications throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, with clients using the Times content as well as content from publishers like The Economist and Harvard Business Review, and columnists like Jorge Ramos. I will tell you 2 brief stories of how we are working well together. In Argentina, Clarín has been publishing the International Weekly, which is a Times product, in print every Saturday, since 2006. When they launched their pay model in 2016, they added the digital version to the website as an added draw for readers looking for high quality content that the Times provides. It's one of their highest read sections by paying subscribers. Another example, in Ecuador, GK City, the country's first digital native publisher, started publishing curated stories from the Times and Espanol this January. As of March, they noticed an increase of 115% in traffic and 77% in page views compared to the prior year. The article with the most success has been How to Raise a Feminist Son, with nearly 2,800 page views in the month of publication and an average of time spent of 5 minutes and 26 seconds, each metric about 5 times their usual. And finally, along with the ability to license our content, we also offer publishers the ability to bundle their digital subscription package with digital access to the New York Times. The brand affiliation helps increase the perceived value of the subscription offer and in turn drives demand for our partners. Over the past 2 years, we have partnered with 9 different publishers. If you are interested in seeing how we might work together, please reach out to me or my colleagues. And thank you for your time. And now, if there are any questions.
Yes, Mike, we can start with some questions, and I have one for you. Being at the top of your class or your pack, and I mean it globally, being the New York Times, who is your competition? Because sometimes we consider competition is what drives us to be better.
We think of our competition today as any product that you're spending time with. And especially those you're paying for. So we think about Netflix, we think about Disney, we think about CNN, we do think about the Washington Post, Amazon taking a lot of money, Google, Facebook. That's who we're thinking about. Now, some of those competitors are also some of our allies. As I said, we produce the paper in 25 different plants around the country. We own one of them, so we are working with 24 other newspapers and hundreds of other newspapers on the distribution side. Obviously, Facebook and Google, we are working with on a daily basis. So they're both the people we think about on the competition side, but are also, at the end of the day, frenemies. Hate the term, but it's...
Tenemos... Horacio, ¿me ayudas con micrófono allá, por favor? A la derecha, el número 7 con 4 dedos en la mano que le acabo de dar.
Solo 4.
Buenos días. Me llamo Nicolás Lamas, soy de España, de una empresa de software para medios de comunicación y muy especializados en las suscripciones, y quería hacerle, bueno, primero felicitarle por los números tan impresionantes que tienen, y quería hacerle 2 preguntas. De los 4,5 millones de suscriptores de los que habló, ¿cuál sería la proporción digital y print? O si comparten digital más print, un poco esa es la pregunta. Y en esa estrategia de digital más print, ¿qué tipo de acciones están siguiendo ustedes? ¿Están ofreciendo un producto digital más print por un precio similar al de print o más bajo? ¿Cómo están intentando captar ese suscriptor para esos productos específicos de print que están ustedes creando? Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Of the 4.5 million, roughly 3.5 million of those are digital only. The million which we attribute to print all get digital access, full digital access as a print subscriber. You also not just get digital news, but you get our digital crossword and our digital cooking app, which also are sold separately. In terms of marketing to and keeping the print reader, first off, one of the things we did when we launched our digital paywall is the price for all access was actually more than the price for the Sunday paper. And so we actually saw people who wanted the digital access just elect to get the Sunday paper. For us, that's a great thing because the Sunday paper is so profitable. But mainly, I'd say we're focused on 2 things in terms of print subscription. The first, the main one, is retention. It's a lot cheaper and a lot easier to keep a subscriber you have than to try to replace that person. That's very expensive. So retention. The second is some of the things I showed, which is trying to keep the product up to date for today's person. We recently launched it digitally, but it has a print component something around parenting, a product around parenting. It's in beta mode right now. But again, what can we do to get that 30 to 40-year-old parent with a young child?
I can speak English. Well, I have two questions too. I think about we here have a business with print and digital. And what did you advise for us the key steps for save our jobs? And the other one is, are you ready for Google or Facebook, not only a technology competitor as a newsroom, even Google or Facebook want to make some content. Are you ready for that?
So first on the advice. First off, let me say that I do not think that what the Times does is the right choice for absolutely everyone. We are in a somewhat unique situation, and we have advantages that others don't have. And so please understand that that's the perspective I'm coming from. I do think a pay model is going to be necessary. The time you do it is up to you, but I don't think that the advertising model ultimately will be sufficient to support businesses. I think from a culture standpoint, again, engagement, and you need everybody from the newsroom to the business side together. This is not the world where we were advertising first and the news side and the business side couldn't talk because we were afraid that if I said something nice about Gucci, it would influence the news side. We all are about the reader. The third thing I would say is fail. If you cannot think about something you failed at in the past 12 months, you're not trying enough. I once had a leader say to me, "We don't all want to be failures." She's no longer with the company. Fail. It means you're testing. It means you're trying. And that's the only way ultimately you're going to learn what works for you.
Hi, Michael. Julio here from Presbyter. Just wanted to ask you, how important do you feel the e-edition or replica product is for publishers in today's market?
My short answer, unfortunately, is I don't know. We have a small and declining e-reader edition. We do not do a PDF version. But I know I do travel around the world, and there are cultures that their electronic replica edition is key to their digital future because that's their readership. So, for the Times, it's not that important, but I think for other societies, it's going to be.
Congratulations, you have been doing an amazing job for many years, but it's even more important during challenging times, I think. You are a role model for the whole industry, and you try things before anybody else, so you are very courageous.
Thank you.
My question for you is, you mentioned that there are 1,600 journalists at the Times, and they no doubt produce an amazing content, but I wonder if they are also involved in metrics, analytics on the business side of the Times as well, contributing with ideas, with insights. I'm
Thanks.
Andrea from Google.
Which reminds me, I didn't answer the question about what are we ready if Google or Facebook starts a newsroom? I don't know. I don't think either of them want to be in the business of producing a daily news report. I think both of them have a wonderful business model that includes us producing the news for them, so I'm not too concerned about it. But they, you know, they're not the only ones who have significantly deeper pockets than we do. If someone with one of those pockets decided to jump in deeply in the news, it'd be competition. I mean, if you think about in the US, the Washington Post was out of the game 5 years ago. We didn't talk about the Washington Post. We didn't think about the Washington Post. They now have an unbelievably deep pocket, and they're back in the game. We're still better. But so the 1,600 are journalists. They are not involved in metrics. They may be involved in social, so figuring out how to put our stories out on social that feels right for the New York Times, but they would not be involved in metrics. We do have a data analytics team. I think the number is close to 100 people now. That is going through looking at what's working, what's not, who's our next subscriber, what makes a subscriber. Is a subscriber someone who reads 10 stories, or is it more important that they read stories from 7 different sections, even if it's one from each? So we are constantly looking at data, and our journalists are getting a lot of that data, but the 1,600 is people involved in the actual production of news. Of course, that's a very different newsroom than one we had 10 or 15 years ago. We've probably, over the past dozen years, bought out somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people from our newsroom. At the same time, our newsroom has grown. So that's about changing the type of people we have and the culture of the newsroom.
Hi, Mike. Victor from Diario Libre. I've just been informed that I have the privilege to be the last question of this session. But during this very successful journey that New York Times had, how is your content creation costs evolution during these years?
That question is, the same answer to that question is in digital as it is in print. If you go back in history during the recessions in the 70s and 80s, that's the time we went from 2 sections to 4 sections, and then from 4 sections to 6 sections. We have historically taken challenging times as a time to invest in journalism. Our newsroom is more expensive than ever, as well as bigger than ever. We spend, I don't know the exact number, but we spend upwards of $300 million on edit. Thank you.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.